When a woman realizes you are no longer interested, the very first thing she notices isn't necessarily something dramatic that you say or do. It's the shift in your energy. Women are deeply intuitive. They don't need you to spell it out or sit them down for a conversation to feel that something has changed. She will notice the way your eyes don't light up in the same way they once did. She'll sense how your texts feel shorter, how your calls come less frequently, and how your presence, even when you're physically there, feels distant. That shift in energy is like a silent alarm bell that rings in her mind, and it tells her without words that the dynamic between you has shifted. At first, she may not fully accept it. She may tell herself that you're just tired, that you're busy, that maybe you're stressed and preoccupied. She wants to believe that your lack of enthusiasm isn't about her. But women are far more observant than we give them credit for. They notice the details. They notice when you don't ask the same questions about their day. They notice when your compliments stop flowing naturally. They notice when your voice doesn't carry the same warmth as before. And it's not always about what you stop doing. It's about the absence of energy, the absence of an absence of attention that once made her feel desired. This is where the first wave of her reaction truly begins, self-reflection. She begins to wonder, what changed? What happened between us? Did I do something wrong? Did I miss the signs earlier? She starts questioning not just you, but herself. A woman in this stage is caught between sensing the truth and trying to protect her heart from it. She wants to hold on, but deep down she knows the truth is unfolding right in front of her. This initial stage is powerful because it's where she feels the difference most vividly. She's not angry yet. She's not detached yet. She's still processing. And in processing, she becomes more sensitive to every move you make. If you're distracted when she talks, she feels it more than ever. If you don't reach out when she expects, it cuts deeper than before. If you seem indifferent to her presence, she doesn't just notice it, she internalizes it. And that's where the complexity of a woman's heart comes into play. On the surface, she may remain calm. She might even smile and act as though everything is normal. But beneath that surface, she's analyzing, she's replaying moments in her mind. She's comparing how you treated her yesterday to how you treat her today. The contrast becomes the proof she cannot ignore. It's important to understand that when a woman senses this shift, she doesn't only see it as your lack of interest in her. She sees it as a reflection of her worth. That's why it hurts so much. She starts wondering if she wasn't enough, if she lost something that made you see her differently, if she failed to keep your attention. She might overanalyze her words, her appearance, her actions, all in an attempt to find the reason behind your change. This isn't because she's weak or insecure. It's because she's deeply invested. And when someone is invested, detachment feels like rejection of the entire self. Now, this stage is not just painful for her, it's defining, because the way you handle this moment will set the tone for what follows. If you continue to pull away without clarity, she will spiral in confusion. If you respond coldly, she will recognize it as confirmation of her fears. But if you remain respectful, even while withdrawing, she will eventually recognize that your lack of interest isn't necessarily a reflection of her value. It's just the truth of where you stand. What's fascinating is how quickly this energetic shift reshapes her perspective. Once she accepts that your energy has changed, she can never unsee it. That silent awareness becomes louder than any excuse you might give. She knows. And women, don't forget the moment they first sense your disinterest. It becomes the marker that defines the rest of the story. So understand this: when a woman realizes you're no longer interested, it doesn't begin with your words. It begins with your absence of presence. It begins with the way you no longer look at her like you once did. It begins with the silence that grows between your sentences. That shift may seem small to you, but to her, it's monumental. Because for a woman, emotional connection is not measured in grand gestures. It's measured in consistent effort, in attention, in energy. When that initial realization sets in, when she feels your energy has shifted and something is no longer the same, what follows is often an inner battle between her ego and her heart. This is one of the most complex and raw stages of her reaction, because it isn't just about you anymore. It becomes about the conflict within her. On one hand, her ego rises up, questioning, demanding, even resisting the truth. On the other hand, her heart quietly aches, holding on, hoping for any sign that her fears aren't real. This duality is powerful, and it explains why her responses during this phase can seem inconsistent, sometimes warm and seeking closeness, and other times distant and guarded. Her ego reacts first because it wants to protect her. The ego doesn't like rejection, it doesn't like being ignored, and it doesn't like losing something it once believed it had secured. So in those early moments, her ego might push her toward denial. She might tell herself, no, he still cares, he's just distracted. This is temporary. She wants to convince herself that nothing has changed. because admitting it means facing a truth that shakes her sense of worth. The ego wants control, and it will fight to hold on to the narrative that she is still desired, still valued, still the center of your attention. But while the ego is fighting on the surface, the heart is processing something much deeper. The heart feels the emptiness that denial tries to cover up. The heart is the part of her that sits in silence after your calls end too quickly, that lingers on the text messages that don't feel the same. That aches when you no longer show up for her emotionally. The heart doesn't argue, doesn't rationalize, it just feels. And this is what makes the battle so intense. The ego is shouting, but the heart is whispering, and over time, the whispers grow louder than the shouts. This tug of war inside her shows up in her behavior. One day she may seem demanding, asking questions, wanting reassurance, needing proof that she still matters to you. That's her ego speaking, trying to reclaim its place, trying to stop the shift it knows is happening. The next day she may fall into silence, appearing cold or detached. That's her heart beginning to withdraw, preparing itself for what it knows is inevitable. If you've ever wondered why a woman can act contradictory when she feels you slipping away, it's because of this very conflict. She is at war with herself between protecting her pride and protecting her feelings. It's not uncommon for women in this stage to overanalyze every little detail. She may read into your words, replay your tone, even dissect the timing of your responses. That's her ego seeking evidence either to confirm her suspicion or to prove it wrong. At the same time, her heart is quietly absorbing every piece of proof, whether she admits it or not. And when the heart accepts what the ego denies, the shift becomes irreversible. She realizes it's not just her imagination, it's reality. What makes this stage so crucial is that it often determines how she will ultimately move forward. If her ego wins, she may stay longer than she should, clinging to the hope that you'll return to how you were before, trying to fix things, even when your lack of interest is clear. But if her heart leads, she may begin to detach sooner, preparing herself emotionally to let go. Either way, the battle must happen because it's part of how she reconciles the loss of something she once held dear. It's important to remember that when a woman is in this phase, her reactions are not just about you. They're about her relationship with herself. Her ego wants to protect her pride, but her heart is protecting her truth. That's why you may see her shift between strength and vulnerability, between confrontation and silence, between anger and sadness. It's not inconsistency. It's the process of acceptance. The beauty and the pain of this stage is that it strips away illusions. She begins to see not just you, but also herself with more clarity. She may realize how much of her sense of worth she tied to your interest, how much of her confidence she allowed to rest on your attention. And though it hurts in the moment, this realization becomes the foundation of her transformation later. Because once her ego stops fighting and her heart stops aching, she emerges stronger, more self-aware, and more prepared to move forward. But before that transformation comes, she must live through the conflict. She must experience the discomfort of questioning herself, the frustration of not having answers, the pain of recognizing that your attention is gone. It's not easy for her, and it may not always be graceful. But this stage is necessary because it is the bridge between denial and acceptance. When she has moved past the denial, past the inner conflict between her ego and her heart, a new stage begins to unfold. This is the point where she starts to test, to question, to seek clarity about what your behavior really means. Because while she has felt the shift, while she has already begun to sense that you are no longer as invested, she still wants confirmation. She wants to know if what she feels is truly real, or if it's simply her mind playing tricks on her. And the way she goes about finding that clarity is often through subtle tests, silent observations, and intentional questions designed to draw out the truth. This is not manipulation, it's her way of protecting herself, because for a woman, detachment is not easy. Letting go of someone she cared for takes strength, and before she fully lets go, she wants certainty. So she might suddenly ask things she never asked before. Questions like, do you even care anymore? Or why don't we spend time together like we used to? These questions are not random. They are her attempts to measure your response, to see if there is still something left between you, or if the distance she feels is exactly what it appears to be. Sometimes these tests don't come in the form of words at all. Sometimes they show up in her actions. She may pull back her energy to see if you notice. She might stop calling first, stop texting first, to see if you will step forward on your own. She might deliberately create space between you just to measure how you react to that space. If you lean in, it tells her there's still something there. If you don't, if you let the silence stretch without effort, she has her answer, and often these tests go deeper. A woman may even provoke small conflicts or emotional reactions just to gauge where you stand. She may act colder, less available, or more indifferent, not because she has stopped caring, but because she wants to see if you will fight for her attention or simply let her drift away. It's her way of asking without asking, do I still matter to you? Am I still worth your effort? This stage is confusing not only for her, but also for you, because you may interpret her behavior as unnecessary drama or as mood swings, when in reality, it's her searching for the truth in the only way she knows how. She cannot always come out and say directly, I fear you're losing interest in me. Instead, she expresses it through subtle changes, through emotional cues, through creating scenarios that reveal the depth or lack of your investment. And here is the most important part: how you respond in this stage defines what happens next. If you respond with frustration, coldness, or avoidance, she will interpret that as confirmation that her intuition was right. You are no longer interested. If you respond with reassurance, presence, and honesty, she may soften, she may feel safe again, and she may give the relationship another chance. But if your energy continues to show disinterest, no matter what you say, she will eventually stop testing. Because once a woman has the clarity she seeks, she no longer needs to ask, and she no longer needs to fight for answers. These tests are not about control. They are about closure. She wants to either see proof that you are still with her, or she wants enough evidence to let herself walk away. And while you may feel exhausted by her questions or her sudden shifts in behavior, you must understand that they come from a place of vulnerability. They are not designed to trap you. They are designed to free her from uncertainty. When she reaches the point where her tests no longer feel necessary, that's when the real shift begins. If she realizes through your responses that your interest is truly gone, she will start preparing herself to detach. If she realizes that you still care but have simply been distant, she may reinvest. Either way, this stage provides her with the clarity she needs to stop living in the confusion of not knowing where she stands. So when she tests you, when she withdraws her energy just to see if you will step forward, when she asks questions that feel heavier than usual, understand that she is not being difficult. She is searching for truth. And once she has that truth, everything that follows will be decided not by her doubts, but by her certainty. Once she has tested, once she has searched for answers and finally faced the truth of where you stand, something inside her begins to shift. This is where the transformation stage begins. It is not immediate, and it doesn't happen without pain, but slowly she starts to move away from questioning you and turns the focus inward. She realizes that if your energy is no longer invested, then the only option she has is to invest back into herself. This transformation can look very different depending on the woman, but in every case, it marks the beginning of her emotional realignment. At first, there is grief. There is the quiet acceptance that what she once felt between you has changed, and that realization stings. But as painful as it is, pain often becomes the birthplace of strength. In those moments, she begins to rediscover herself outside of the relationship, outside of your attention, outside of the validation that she once leaned on. This is when she starts reclaiming the parts of her identity that may have been put aside when she was fully invested in you. She might throw herself into her work, into her passions, into her friendships, or even into her personal growth. For some women, this transformation looks like independence. She detaches not because she wants to prove a point, but because she genuinely recognizes the futility of clinging to someone who no longer shares the same level of desire. She may start focusing on her fitness, her career, her spiritual life, or her hobbies. It's not about replacing you. It's about rebuilding herself. And with every small step she takes back toward her own power, the emotional weight of your disinterest begins to fade. For others, this transformation takes a different route. Instead of internalizing, they externalize. They seek new experiences, new connections, and sometimes even new relationships. This isn't always about finding someone else immediately. It's often about reminding themselves that they are still desirable, that they still hold value outside of what you no longer give them. It's a way of reaffirming their worth in the face of the void your absence created. Whether she chooses the path of independence or the path of seeking external validation, both roads eventually lead her to the same place, a stronger, clearer, and more resilient version of herself. What's remarkable about this stage is that the very energy she once poured into you begins to be redirected. The texts she once sent to check in on you are now messages sent to friends she had lost touch with. The time she once dedicated to waiting for your calls is now spent building her skills, her dreams, her future. The love she once reserved for you becomes love she starts learning to give to herself. And the more she invests in herself, the less she needs answers from you, and the less she feels the sting of your absence. This transformation doesn't always look graceful from the outside. You may see her withdraw suddenly, stop responding, or even appear indifferent. To you, it might look like she's become cold, like she doesn't care anymore. But what you're really witnessing is her reclaiming her energy, reclaiming her power, and choosing to no longer give to a place where she no longer receives. It can be jarring to see because the same woman who once poured so much of herself into you now seems unreachable. But that shift is not meant to punish you. It's her way of protecting herself and moving forward. And in this stage, something else happens. Along with her personal transformation, she also begins to see you differently. The pedestal she may have once placed you on starts to disappear. The intensity of her longing begins to soften. The illusions she held about the connection give way to clarity. She begins to realize that your disinterest does not define her worth. It only defines your choice. That recognition is powerful because once she truly understands it, she no longer takes your behavior as a reflection of her value. She begins to see it as a reflection of who you are and where you are in your own journey. This stage is often where the dynamic between you shifts most dramatically. Because while you may have expected her to always care, always chase, always question, suddenly she no longer does. She no longer reacts to the same triggers, no longer seeks the same reassurance, no longer waits for you to show up differently. She has started to move on, and in moving on, she has changed not just her relationship with you, but her relationship with herself, and whether her transformation is expressed through independence or through redirecting her energy into new connections. One truth remains: she no longer allows your disinterest to hold her hostage. She has turned that pain into power, and that loss into growth. And once she reaches this point, the version of her you knew before is gone. When she reaches the stage where her energy is no longer invested in you, when she has begun to transform and redirect her focus inward, something profound begins to happen. She comes face to face with the silent realization of value. This isn't about the words you say, because by now words mean very little. It's about the absence, the silence, the gap that your disinterest has created. And in that space, she begins to see clearly what your presence once brought into her life and what your absence now teaches her. At first, this realization doesn't come with anger. It comes with quiet awareness. She remembers how deeply she once felt when your attention was consistent, when your energy was present, when your presence had weight. She remembers how she felt desired, how she felt chosen, how she felt seen. And now, in contrast, she feels the emptiness where that energy once existed. That contrast is what makes her realize the true value of what she had and what you've let slip away. This realization is not only about missing you, it's about redefining herself in relation to you. Because while she once tied her sense of importance to how much you cared, she now begins to see that your lack of interest does not erase her worth. In fact, it makes her more aware of it. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to her that she deserves presence, she deserves consistency, and she deserves effort. And when she sees that she is not receiving it, she no longer blames herself. She accepts that you have simply chosen not to give it. There's a certain power in this stage that often goes unnoticed. Many men assume that when a woman detaches, it's because she has grown cold or stopped caring. But in reality, it's often the opposite. She has cared so deeply, so fully, that she was forced to confront the pain of your absence until she could no longer ignore it. That pain has sharpened her awareness. And now, instead of clinging, instead of begging for answers, she recognizes the truth for what it is. Your absence has spoken louder than anything you could ever say. And this is where respect or regret enters the picture. Because when a woman reaches this stage, you are no longer just someone she once loved. You are someone she evaluates with clarity. If she looks back and sees that even in your disinterest, you treated her with respect, she may carry a sense of gratitude, even admiration for the way you handled the end. But if she looks back and sees that your disinterest came with neglect, with disregard, with a lack of empathy, then regret sets in. Not for herself, but for you. Because she realizes that you lost more than you understood at the time. It's in this silence, in this absence, that she truly sees the value of what you both shared. And she also sees the cost of what's been lost. And for many women, this becomes the final turning point. The need for clarity is gone. The tests are no longer necessary. The inner battles no longer consume her. She is no longer stuck in confusion because the truth has been revealed in the most undeniable way through your consistent lack of effort. That silence has answered every question she once had. And here's the truth most men overlook: when a woman reaches this stage, she no longer demands anything from you. She doesn't chase, she doesn't plead, she doesn't fight to be seen. She allows you to feel the weight of her absence just as she once felt the weight of yours. And that is when many men realize too late what they had. Because while she has transformed, while she has grown, while she has found strength in her detachment, you are left to finally understand the value of the presence you took for granted. That realization, however, comes with a cost. Because once she has recognized her own worth in the absence of your interest, she doesn't go back. The door that was once open no longer remains the same. She may still respect you. She may still wish you well, but she no longer waits for you. She has stepped into a new version of herself, one that understands her value not because of you, but in spite of you. And when she reaches this point, the truth is undeniable. The absence of your interest taught her more about herself than your presence ever did.